You're listening to Big World Network.
Skyfire, Season 2, Episode 10, written and read by Arthur W. Johnson. This home I make for you, my love, to raise our bairn and make a life, away from all the crowded towns, away from all the daily strife. Seamus spent a great deal of time felling spruce and pine trees to build a cabin in the method he had seen in those parts. It was time-consuming since the only tool he had to work with was a hatchet. He would have to go to Fort Dearborn after he got his young family settled and buy some decent tools. He collected boulders from the river and built a solid fireplace with a chimney on the downwind side to keep the sparks off the roof. He chinked the stones with river mud since no mortar was available, using dry dirt to thicken the mud to a mortar-like paste. He had found an open meadow full of tall grass that he was able to turn into the type of thatched roof he had learned to make in Ireland. He knew it would hold the warmth. When it was done, he moved his family in with as much ceremony as he could muster, for this was their palace. Bright Moon made a great show of being impressed, but as soon as he was out hunting, she began making small changes so that it would be more utile and comfortable. She had found a stand of cedars and covered the dirt floor with their boughs. Most importantly, she thought about all the things that Seamus would have to add to make it complete. Men just don't think of things like a high ledge to keep animals out of the food supplies, or sleeping platforms to keep them off the cold ground in the winter. He would have more work to do when he returned, and she hoped he wouldn't mind. "Of course I don't mind," he said. "I will do whatever will make you happy, my love. You just tell me what and where, and consider it done." After taking care of those chores to make the cabin a home for her, and bringing in enough game and fish to keep her supplied, Seamus set off for Fort Dearborn. "I'm going to trade in the rest of the furs for some much-needed supplies," he explained as he loaded up the canoe. "Are you sure you'll be all right while I'm gone?" "Of course, husband. This is a good lodge, and I know my way around the forest. Go now, and don't worry." His trip was much faster without the extra weight and the need for frequent stops. He set up an account with James Kenzie from the remaining furs and thought about the necessities for living far from civilization. Primary items included fresh powder and lead for the musket, a good cross-cut saw, a rip saw, and a file to sharpen them with, a double-bit axe, a stone to sharpen it, a good draw knife, and many other essentials. He debated over the price of a plow and a horse, but decided to delay that plan. To top off the essentials, he bought a harmonica to impress Bright Moon even more than he had done with his whistling. He thought he could remember how to play, even though it had been a few years since he had last put one to his lips. When James told him that he had fair amount still on account, he asked him to bank it for future needs. On his return trip, he was amazed at the number of small lakes that seemed to form a chain along the river. He told Bright Moon about them when he arrived. "They're only a short paddle away to the south," he said. "I'd like to show them to you sometime." He showed her the tools he had bought and how they worked, and soon he was ripping trees into planks and making a door and shutters to hang on the hinges he had bought. While he worked, she explained to him that she had finally decided on the name that would be fitting for the son of Waving Grass. She looked up at the thatchwork roof and said, "We will call him Tallgrass." "That would be fitting," he said with a smile, "because he will be tall like his father, and to call him Tallgrass after his mother would be good. I like it." He showed her how the door latch worked and the shutters opened and closed and said, "These will keep the animals out of the food better than the high shelf. These are good things, husband." As she sat outside with the baby on each knee and admired his work, he pulled out the harmonica and started in on an Irish ballad that she had heard him whistle. She snapped her head around and stared at the source of the unusual sound. "What is that, husband?" she asked when he stopped. "This," he said, holding it out for her to take, "is called a harmonica. I learned to play it as a lad in Ireland." She reached around Tallgrass to take it while supporting the baby with her forearm. After a thoughtful pause, she said, "I would like to see this Ireland some day. You have so many wonderful things there." "There are some wonderful things, and there are some not so wonderful things. I'm afraid the people of my country would find you hard to accept. That is one of the not so wonderful things." "Why, husband?" "To begin with, your skin is not as pale white as they would like. Then there are your eyes, nothing like Irish eyes. And you have quite an accent." "What is an accent?" "Do you hear the difference between the way I speak your language and the way your people do?" "Yes." That is a difference in accents. My people accepted the difference in your accent, she said matter-of-factly. Most of them do, but they are more tolerant than mine. I think I would like to see your Ireland and the place where you were a boy. Perhaps someday we can manage that. We'll wait and see. He took the harmonica back from her and put it to his lips, concentrating on one of his favorite ditties so he wouldn't have to think about all the reasons that trip would never happen. Afterwards he slipped into his favorite lullaby and watched the boys' eyes as they went from playful to sleepy. Soon they had nodded off and Bright Moon was able to rest for a while. I'm thinking that I'll spend a little time making a better trap for the coming winter, Seamus said. I've been thinking about a design I want to try, and he described it to her. Will you and the boys be all right while I go off into the woods to find what I need? Yes, husband, she nodded sleepily in the warm summer air. The lullaby had had its effect on her as well. He quietly set the harmonica aside, collected the tools he would need, and slipped away, leaving the three of them dozing outside in the shade of the cabin. It was nearly pitch dark by the time Seamus gathered up his tools and the trap he had created and made his way back to the clearing. He didn't see the dark form in the path as he came out of the woods and stumbled, dropping everything in his attempt to stop his fall. He crawled back to see what had caught his foot, feeling as he went. His hand touched fur and he froze. His thoughts raced through the possibilities as he groped the fur to find a head. He suddenly realized what it was when he felt the ear. Why is a wolf laying in the path, and why is it not moving? Where were Bright Moon and the boys? Why was there such a chill going up his spine? He cried out in panic, "Bright Moon, where are you?" There was a groan to his right. His eyes finally made out her shadowy shape still outside the cabin, huddled against the wall next to the door. He raced to her side to find her body wrapped around the boys to protect them and her shoulder ripped open by the jaws of the wolf. What happened? We were napping and I heard a sound. I woke up when the wolf was about to take tall grass. I pulled my knife out and jumped on his back. He rolled out from under me and bit down on my shoulder. She flinched at the memory of the wolf's teeth sinking into her flesh. I stuck my knife into him and he tore at me with his teeth. I cut him with my knife as he pulled away. He let go and ran over there, she said, pointing at the wolf's still body. He sat down and stared at me, and all I could do was protect the boys. He's dead now, Seamus said as he eased the knife from her iron grasp. You killed him. I'm sorry, but he should not try to take the babies. Let me help you into the cabin so I can fix your shoulder. She winced as she scooped up one of the babies with her good arm, and he took the other. They carefully went inside and laid the boys down, and Seamus lit one of the candles he had bought back in Fort Dearborn and fixed it to the platform. Let's get this off, he said, indicating the deer hide top Bright Moon wore. He helped her get it past the wounds on her shoulder. That's a nasty tear, my love. There's a piece of loose skin hanging. I don't know if it will grow back together right. Do what you think best, husband. Seamus proceeded to quickly cut away the torn skin with his own sharp knife. He then cleaned the wound as best he could with the limited supplies and knowledge he had. I brought some medicine that Waving Grass had left, Bright Moon managed to say. She said they used it on her when she was sick for the first time, she said through gritted teeth. It did not help her the last time, but maybe it will help me. Where is it then, love? She pointed to the parflat stowed under the platform, and he pulled it out from under her feet. Let's hope this works. The concoction had grown thicker as the water had evaporated. It was no longer a liquid, but more of a gooey mess in the satchel. He spread a gob of the pasty stuff on her shoulder, and her eyes rolled back in pain. She moaned, then sucked in air through her teeth. Should I take it off? He asked. No, it will be all right, she whispered as she bit down on her lower lip. Perhaps now is the time to go back to your people and let them treat this, Seamus said in concern. No, husband, it's not that bad. Just let me rest for a while. As you wish, my love. She slumped over sideways, rolling away from him. He gently lifted her feet onto the platform and covered her with a blanket. She rolled over and lay with her back to the room, so he did not know when she dozed off. Seamus tried to gently waken Bright Moon after little Robin showed no signs of going back to sleep. She did not respond. He began to worry about the effects of the tear in her shoulder. He held Robin and rocked him to comfort him as he thought back through the knowledge of bites he had, until he came across the memory of that fearful word rabies. God help us, he thought, and prayed to his Maker that it not be that. He wouldn't know how to deal with rabies. After 2 more unsuccessful attempts to rouse her, he bared her breast himself and laid Robin down to suckle. He hoped it was the right thing to do. The child needed substance, and she was not awake to do it herself. He watched as his son went from suckling greedily to occasionally remembering in his sleep what he was supposed to be doing. Then he removed him from his mother's bed so that she could sleep peacefully. What was he to do if this state she was in went on for long? She would have to have sustenance herself in order to produce milk for 2 growing boys. He dozed off with that thought and woke later to the sound of tall grass stirring for his turn at feeding. He was grateful when he opened his eyes to see Bright Moon picking up the baby to feed him. "How do you feel, my love?" he asked quietly so as not to startle her. "My shoulder is sore," she whispered, "but I will be all right. You had me worried when I couldn't wake you earlier." She looked over at him in the dim light and asked, "Why did you try to wake me?" Robin was hungry. She looked over at the sleeping form of her son with worry in her own brow. "What did you do, husband?" "I took care of the problem myself." Her glance shifted to his chest and she asked, "How?" "Well, certainly not like that," he said when he saw where her gaze fell. "I put him on your breast myself until he was done. Then I put him back where he is now." She thought about that for a moment and smiled. "Thank you for letting me sleep," she said. Tallgrass snuffled and let go, so he too was put back to finish his nap. "I was so afraid for you, my love." "Why?" "I was afraid that the wolf might have been rabid and that you might get it too." "What is rabid?" "It is a disease that some animals get that makes them act odd and slaver and attack people they usually would run from." "Oh, husband, it would not have been that bad this soon. Besides, he did not attack me. He wanted the babies." She shook her head and added, "This is not rabid. Rabies. You said rabid before. Rabid is how an animal with rabies acts." "Oh," she said. After a thoughtful pause, she added, "Sometimes your language is confusing. I keep forgetting to explain as I go. Sorry, love." "It's all right. I will get it someday. The point is that I was worried you would get rabies and I wouldn't know how to take care of you and the boys." He smiled forlornly at her before adding, "Please don't get sick." His sincerity brought a tear to her eye, and she thought again how lucky she was to have become his woman. She knew he would always treat her well. "You have not told me about your new trap, husband," she said to get him off the subject. "I completely forgot about it when I tripped over the wolf." "I will get rid of the wolf and bring in the trap for you to see." "Don't get rid of the wolf until morning. I want to see it again. I must tell it that I'm sorry for killing it." He looked questioningly at her but did not ask what she meant. Instead, he said, "All right," and he brought the newly designed trap into the cabin and explained how it would work. She looked it over with her practical mind as he explained, and she nodded her agreement. She pulled and tugged and saw how sturdy he had made the device. As she handed it back to him, she said, "It would be better if beaver did not have teeth. If you leave them alive, will they not chew their way out? They do chew trees down for dams." He sat down next to his invention, perplexed that he had not thought the project through to that one last little detail. "Maybe I can use it to trap other animals that don't chew, like rabbits, for our meals. Besides, that will cut down on the amount of powder and shot I need to feed us." "That will be good, husband. I am sorry about the beaver, but it would have been worse to find out later. It's all right. After all, that's what makes us good together." She rotated her shoulder and winced. "I would like to rest some more while the boys are still asleep." "You go ahead, my love. I'll listen for the little ones." He kissed her on the cheek and sat down by the dying fire to think about his trap. Maybe he could redesign it to keep the beaver from chewing. Perhaps he could devise some way of preventing the beaver from moving its head around to get a tooth into the wood. He would have to think about that.
Music by Kevin MacLeod.
You're listening to Big World Network.